In this video, we'll be looking at Chapter 10, Triangle Trigonometry, and continuing our Section 10.2, Trigonometric Ratios. The last video was a fairly lengthy video and looking at how to manually calculate the ratios for sine, cosine, and tangent. This video will be looking at how to use a calculator to go ahead and figure those ratios up, and also look at the inverse ratios for sine, cosine, and tangent, and how to find those on a calculator. So this is going to require a lot of independent work on your part because each calculator is different. The calculator on my iPhone looks different than the calculator that is on this computer that I'm using, that I'm going to demonstrate. It will probably look different from the calculator that you are using. But they basically have some of the same built-in trigonometric function keys, and you'll need to go ahead and figure those out and figure the correct order that you use those. If you don't have a calculator, again, there's the same keys on your phone. You might have to switch it from simple calculator to scientific calculator, and you can also find apps for your phone, and if you go onto the internet for free calculator, you can find calculators online also. So luckily it's not like the old days where we have to get a slide rule. Not that that was my old days, that's even before me. But it makes it really nice now. So what I want you to do is find these keys here on your calculator: sine, cosine, and tangent. And we'll go ahead and be working primarily to start with those keys. And I promise you, one of the things that I did not do is it didn't trick you into doing these calculations manually, just because, just to make you do it. It is good to understand how to come up with sine, cosine, and tangent, but fortunately, we're not going to manually be doing inverse sine, cosine, and tangent. I'll show you how to do those just on the calculator. So to be able to find the sine of an angle, and so in this case we're giving sine of 38 degrees, and so let's go ahead and remember what we're talking about here. We have a right triangle and we have 38 degrees. And so we remember from SOHCAHTOA that if we wanted to find this, we could just find side opposite over hypotenuse and be able to find the sine for 38 degrees, except for they don't give us the opposite over or the hypotenuse, and it's not a special triangle, and so we don't know what those sides are. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and stab this into the calculator, and my calculator is a little bit different than the one that they describe here in my order, so you might have to do yours in a different order also. Rather than pressing the sine button first on mine, I have to go 38 sine, and then I come up with the same answer that they have, and that's 0.616. Okay. All right. So go ahead and hopefully you can pause the video and play around until you get this answer as well. We'll figure out how to use this. This is going to make your life a lot easier for the next two sections in the remainder of the course. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, and we're going to talk a little bit about when finding sine, cosine, and tangent given in degrees and minutes, so we can go ahead and work that. Now, one of the things that's important is it says in here, I believe, to make sure that your calculator is in degrees, and I will show you on my calculator. Make sure that it's in degrees here. The other choices are radians and grade. In case you're doing roads, we just want degrees, and so make sure that your calculator is set up in degrees when you're going to calculate using minutes and seconds, and we're just going to be doing minutes. So to be able to find sine, cosine, and tangent using minutes, then what you need to do is you need to find whatever that trigonometric ratio is, sine, cosine, or tangent, with the minutes separated out. And so for my calculator, it's a little different than theirs again. I have to put in the number first, and I need to manually put in my parentheses. So I'm going to walk you through how mine is, and then yours might be different. So I need to put in the parentheses 54, and then so 54 are degrees, and then 28 minutes, and we know that, so we're going to add 28, and then we're going to divide that by 60, because we know that there are 60 minutes in a degree, so it's 28 out of 60. And so that's 54 degrees, 28 out of 60 minutes. And I come up with this number right here. After I get this number, then for my calculator, I have to then hit cosine, which gives me the same answer as what they have here. And more importantly, it gives you the knowledge, let's not forget what we're doing here, that the cosine from the angle that they were looking at right here is 54 degrees and 28 minutes. And using that angle, we are finding the cosine, which, remember, the cosine is ca, so it's the angle over the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So to this 54 degrees and 28 minutes, we're finding the adjacent angle over the hypotenuse, and that is the cosine 0.5811. All right, let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So what if we need to go the opposite way? And again, we're given a triangle, a right triangle, and we are given the either sine, cosine, or tangent value, the trigonometric function, but we don't know what the degrees are. Well, we can find that by using what they call the inverse trigonometric function. And on your calculator, that looks like this. Let me see if I can get mine to move over here. And so for mine, looks like the shift key. And so you see how it changes these numbers right here to be inverse, sine, cosine, and tangent. And remember from using fractions, so why that is a -1 as our exponent there. And it's not truly an exponent, it's just more of an indicator of that is the inverse of sine, cosine, and tangent. And so I flip through, I go sine, cosine, and tangent, and that is the inverse keys for those. So again, my calculator is a little bit different than theirs. So when we look at how to find the inverse sine, or we are given a triangle, a right triangle, and we are given that it has a sine of 0.728, but we don't know what that angle is. And so what we can do is get our calculator, and again, mine is different, and so I will, for mine, I have to input the number first, 0.728, and then go inverse sine, and I come up with 46.72, which now will tell us 46.72 in degrees what that angle is. Oh, all right. Again, just get to know your calculator a little bit, and you can do the same thing with finding degrees using minutes using the inverse the same or very similar to what we did using the finding minutes when we're finding sine, cosine, and tangent, but this is just for the inverse. And let's see, for my calculator, again, it's a little bit different. And so work with your calculator to figure out what this is, because you're trying to, you want to find whatever that angle is here. Since it's cosine, you know that it is whatever it is, this 0.296 has to do with the ratio of cosine, so ca, and so adjacent over the hypotenuse. And so we're going to find the angle associated with 0.296 cosine. And we're going to go ahead and input let me clear this, 0.296 inverse cosine. And then from that, what I would do is I'm going to subtract off my whole number, so 72. I'm going to subtract off that because I know now that this is, whatever this is at 72 degrees. And to be able to find the minutes, I'll go ahead and subtract off that 72. And that gives me, let me redo this one again, because so 0.296 and inverse cosine minus 72 leaves me with that number right there, 0.78, and I'm going to multiply that because it is 0.78 of a degree, so I'm going to multiply that times 60 minutes to be able to get 46.9, and so round that up to 47. Remember, I subtracted off my degrees, and so what this gives me is the minutes, and so that's going to give me 47 minutes. So 72 degrees, 47 minutes is this angle right here that I've come up with from using the inverse cosine. And the same thing works with inverse tangent and inverse sine. It just depends on which part of ca, toa, what you're looking for on your triangle. So this will conclude this video, and hopefully it is helpful. Go back and continue using your calculator to try to come up with and make sure that you know how to use it for the next sections.